Welcome, Taishar. I am a man of Manetheren. So today, I was looking up some information that I had been a part of conversations with OBG70 Mike and Prophet and Salty Texas and Renaissance Nerd. And I believe it was Mike had brought up Google Trends. And I thought that this was interesting. And so I'm wanting to share this because it is quite an interesting thing when we consider all that they're doing. And so here is the Google Trends as of today. This is New Year's Eve. And this is when we're looking at the Wheel of Time. Their peak interest date was when the show got released. And we see that it drops significantly. Slightly recovers to the last episode. Now, again, this interest is based on the 100% being Wheel of Time at its 100% peak. Drops to near 50% within 3 or 4 weeks. It takes a significant nosedive going into episode 4, which was everybody's favorite episode, going from a 100 to a 64. That's pretty big. Kind of tells you that it doesn't have any staying power. Now let's drop in a comparison here, and Mike did this, and I wanted to show it to you just in case you haven't seen it, to Witcher Season 2. And the peak interest for Wheel of Time is dwarfed compared to the peak interest time of Witcher Season 2 with its release. I mean, we're looking at, what is that? Like 40% maybe? Yeah, 40% of what Witcher's peak is. And we see there at the release time of Witcher right before, Wheel of Time had dropped, and then it gets destroyed the minute The Witcher's released. And then on the date they share the finale and The Witcher's release as well, Witcher's 3-4 times as much. So I thought that was interesting to see transpire. Well, I decided to go look and see what it was saying on Rotten Tomatoes with what they've got going on. And their ratings have been abysmal, to say the least. And when you look at their rating systems, or their ratings by episode, you don't get much with the episode by episode. If we go through, we'll see episode 1, no consensus yet. Same thing with episode 2, episode 3. 4's got 100% with 6 critic ratings. But the rest of them here, as you can see, they're all, no consensus, no consensus, no consensus, no consensus. Ugh, that picture's horrible. So, what are we to make of this? Well, if we go to the Wheel of Time, and I'm going to bring up my calculator with this too. If we go to their main website, we're going to see that they have an 82% rating, but the fan score has plummeted to 67%. But I want to concentrate on this critic score. So we have about 75 ratings overall done on this, and somehow this calculates to 82%. I don't know how they get to that, because 7.25 out of 10 is 72.5% on your average rating. And if we, let's say, take this 49 fresh ratings, and we take that into account with all of the ratings total, we get 65.33%. So something's not adding up to 82%. I don't know how they do it. I could care less. But we're going to look at something interesting. This is with all critics. Now, if we switch over to top critics, this is going to be damning here, folks. Top critics rate this at 54% fresh. So it's actually not fresh, according to what Rotten Tomatoes has. That's going to tell you that the non-top critics are all a bunch of shills, and they're the ones that are bumping that sucker all the way up to 82%. The top critics have spoken. You know, and here the fresh rating, the 15 divided by 28, actually is pretty close to what the percentage is. So again, nothing in their calculation really adds up to what I'm looking at here, what I would think would make sense, but it's just very interesting. Again, we're going from 82% right there down to 54%. That's a massive drop when you consider just those licensed top critics they want to look at. And then you got the audience score, which is 67% and dropping, because it was above 80 at one point. So it's really interesting. Now I want to take a look at these top critics and see what they're saying, because this does matter. When we look here, Matt Roush from TV Insider. Now he's not a top critic, so he's actually one of the few guys that has the testicular fortitude to be not a top critic and not be a shill. You know, definite deficit of whimsy and wonder. Wheel introduces a thinly developed characters that makes it hard to care or see who survives. It's a chaotic film attacked by a chaotically filmed attack by monstrous Trollocs. That's really good. That's good to hear. That's good to see, because these people need to, you know, be held to account. And, you know, another, not a top critic, but from what I understand, longtime fans of the books have felt underwhelmed and badly served by some changes in characterizations and the aging up of main players. That, it's some, at least it's more honest than what is not, what is actually presented. But fans of the books have been badly served and maliciously treated by Rape Judkins. So now we're going to actually look at some top critics. This is where it gets interesting, folks. So Vern Gay from Newsday. You are left with the uneasy, then sinking feeling that Wheel, as sumptuous a production as this is, has been done before and better a couple of times at least. That's a pretty good, strong criticism, and actually gives him he gives a score of 2.5 out of 4, which I think is generous. I'd give it a 0.1 negative. William Bibiani of The Wrap, another top critic. It's genuinely baffling how perfunctory the storytelling feels in The Wheel of Time. Preach, brother. I'm telling you. There's no cohesiveness in this. Let's look at In-Koo Kang of The Washington Post. It fulfills Bezos' alleged demand for Amazon to develop its own Game of Thrones in the most unspecial manner possible. I love it. How have these people not been canceled for daring to criticize? James Wazik, pardon me if I mispronounced your name, which I guarantee you I did, New York Times top critic. Early on, the wanderers take refuge in a cursed city. Its deserted streets lined with Baroque architecture and statuary. Wheel, as a production, feels like that. It is a breathtakingly detailed edifice with no people in it. And you can sit there and apply that no people in it, and apply that nearly to everything. The White Tower in Tar Valon, the streets of Faldara, there is... Everything feels thin. The battle in episode 4, if you want to call that a big battle from armies, great. You had an Aes Sedai sitting there blowing up the earth, protecting themselves from a grand total of a baker's dozen of troops that were basically tripping down a hill. Okay. But it's a good statement from this guy from the New York Times that it's really not that big of a production. I mean, or not as detailed as it should be. Especially when you consider how much money they put into this. We wonder where it disappeared to. Fiona Sturgis from the Financial Times. There's enough violence and faux mysticism to keep the genre fans happy. Not really. Convincing human interactions are harder to find. There we go. Now, I would venture to say that these interactions are hard to find because the writing is so poor. I'm not quite as hard on the acting, although, if you give these actors something to work with, we would find out if their acting is good. But when the writing is garbage, it's really difficult to criticize the abilities of the actors in a lot of respects. RogerEbert.com, it's hard to get lost in this world when it feels so emotionally distant, so scattered, and so packed with thin plot lines. Ain't that the truth? Everything is done to where all the stuff that they've added in, all the ham-fisted wokeisms that are just shoved in here, take you immediately out of the world that they're trying to present. So rather than develop the world, develop the cities and the characters and the cultures, they shove all this wokeness down your throat, and it takes you right out of the element. Dan Feinberg here says, I've never felt like I was watching an unfolding story, but I absolutely felt like I was watching the whiteboard in a writer's room, more the pushing of note cards toward a destination than an adventure. Bingo. That one right there, I have long felt that what we had was Rape Judkins and the writers sitting in a room saying, I want to have these scenes in the book. And then how we get to these scenes, we'll figure it out from there. The easy one is he wanted to present the battle in Emond's Field, rather than showing just the fight scene in Rand getting his father back to Emond's Field, like in the books. So he wanted that scene in there. And then from there, he wanted to get to Shadow Lagoth. Didn't care how he got there, but wanted to get there. He wanted to present the White Cloaks, and he wanted to present them poorly. Then after that, it's, okay, well, we got to have a White Bridge type filler in there, so we're going to create this city out of village out of whole cloth, so we'll throw that in there. But really, that's just a filler piece so that we can get them into Tar Valon, which replaces Caemlyn, so that we can have a lesbian hookup with Moiraine and Swan Sanche. And then ham-fist this dream by Swan that, they need to get to the Eye of World, so now let's go here. They wanted to put the ways in there, so you have an episode that just says, hey, we've got the ways, so we check that one off the list. So when you want to push toward events, you let the events do most of your talking, and you don't really develop things to get to those events. And that has been so much of the poor writing, because they want to sit there and present this bit of wokeness, and they don't want to sit there and develop the characters. And so it really does them a great amount of injustice when you get to trying to write them. Here's another one. Will The Wheel of Time be a hit? Don't ask me. All I know is I went into a kind of death spiral after watching the first episode, and that's from the New Statesman. How dare she make a comment like that? Never mind the fact, I'm wondering if she went, because this was on November 16th, I was wondering, did she go through episode 2? Because if she did, I'm wondering if Rachel Cook is still alive, because she might have hung herself after watching the rest of the season if she felt a death spiral after that first episode. Hope she's okay. Prayers for her. This last one here from Rolling Stone. It may bring some fantasy fans starved for any morsel of magic and wonder, but the whole thing is empty, if expensive, calories. I mean, these things are just damning statements. But they're legitimate statements. What's wrong with being able to present a good story and have your efforts in presenting that good story there, speak for themselves? Well, the efforts do speak for themselves. The efforts that Rape Judkins, I mispronounced his name, Rape Judkins, has done to the story have been so lacking in authenticity in his interactions with the fan base, and I speak about the book fan base, speak for themselves. And if you lose your book fans, that ready-made audience, if you lose them because of how you're treating the material, you're going to lose the whole fan base, because it's not going to be something that has any legs. Lord of the Rings were successful movies because they did right by the books, therefore they did right by the fans of the books, and the fans returned that with making the movie great, popular. They brought non-book fans into that realm of the story, and they ended up loving it because they actually saw an honest effort at a good presentation, and it showed. Game of Thrones was like this, and then towards the end, when everything went pear-shaped, you just saw a complete disaster, because they started messing with the characters. They started messing with caring about writing a good story. And when you do that, when you turn on a fan base, when you turn on the material, and that's even the bigger point there, when you turn on the material that you have worked to try and present, then you've lost. I don't think this will go beyond a second season. I think the second season will be enough for Amazon to pull the plug. They may go for the third season that they've renewed it for, but I have my doubts that they will. But they're not going to get through their anticipated 50 episodes that they think that they can present Robert Jordan's work in the entire time. These things are evidence of that, and I'd like to know what you think too. The top critic rating thing is something that I haven't seen covered yet by anybody, but how it's being bolstered by all the remainder of the minor critics, the shills and whatnot, is very telling. And I don't know that even the shill threads on Reddit or wherever are really paying attention to that. This is not a well-received television show by most measurable standards. And it'll be interesting to see how, if this stuff comes to light, how those shill fans respond in kind. Game of Thrones, or sorry, not Game of Thrones. Wheel of Time is an unmitigated failure. And there's no way around that. We've seen that with the Google Trends, and we've seen this when we look deeper at the ratings, even on just Rotten Tomatoes. And, we'll suffer through the seasons that do get produced, but I don't think there will be too many. And hopefully someone down the line can do what I would prefer to see as an animated series. But someone would get the rights to do it and produce it and do it right. And not make lock stock changes. You don't need to make changes, really. And hopefully I may have something in the cards to be able to prove that you can get away with minimal, if any, changes. Staying faithful to the material is a good thing. I don't care how much better you think you are than the material. So anyway, let me know what you think about this. I'd be interested to get your thoughts down below. If you think I've missed anything, if you think I'm totally off base, fine. But I'd be definitely interested to hear what you all have to say regarding this different side of Rotten Tomatoes that not many people pay attention to. So anyway, talk to you all later. Appreciate you watching. As for now, Shegar Asa Nivron Taishar Menetherin.